Good afternoon. Welcome back to House Appropriations. Today is Monday, March 10th, 3 o'clock, and we are taking up Bill 57. And to give us a quick walkthrough, it will be from Council. Welcome. Hopefully, I don't think I've had the opportunity to run into you this session. So welcome to your new role and thank you for helping us.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. And for the record, this is Sophie Zadatny. I'm from the Office of Legislative Counsel. And I'm happy to run through this as quickly or as in detail as you would like. But it sounded like maybe quicker was better from the opening remarks there. So H57 relates to, it's named as relating to survivor benefits for law enforcement officers. So just as a quick overview, H57 seeks to make changes to the monetary benefit of $80,000 paid to the family of emergency personnel who die in the line of duty or from an occupation-related illness that's presumed to have occurred in the line of duty. And as introduced, it sought to extend coverage to law enforcement officers. The House Committee on General and Housing has recommended a strike-all amendment that adopts a version of H695 from last year with a couple of changes. And so just quickly, the changes from H57 as was introduced include expanding coverage to include the survivors of corrections officers in addition to law enforcement officers within the definition of emergency personnel. It also expands the definitions of child, domestic partner, and spouse. It changes the composition of the board that reviews the claims and awards the benefits. It requires that survivors request the benefit within 24 months of the death of the emergency personnel and gives the board discretion to extend the time period due to extenuating circumstances. And it gives the Treasurer's Office up to 1 year to pay out a monetary award. So I can go through in more detail, happy to answer any questions that anyone may have as we go along. So Section 1 just notes that the act would be known as Jessica's Law. Jessica was a Rutland City police officer who was killed in the line of duty in July of 2023. Section 2, it lists out the amendments to 20 VSA Chapter 181. And again, as I mentioned, it expands the definitions of a child to include biological children, foster children, adopted children, stepchildren, legal wards, and children for whom the deceased had day-to-day responsibilities to care for and financially support when the child was under the age of 18. On page 2, it adds a statutory definition of a correctional officer. It references the statute, and I can just tell you what that statutory definition is, as that's not listed here. It means any person who's an employee of the Department of Corrections, whose official duties or job classification includes the supervision or monitoring of a person on parole, probation, or serving any sentence of incarceration, whether inside or outside a correctional facility, and who has received training. Yeah.
Sophie, if I may, we don't need to go into the real details because the policy committee's already done that. So
okay.
So the overview is helpful. I guess I have a question. Current law, what's the difference between current law and this? Because we do have a survivor benefit program.
Right. So the survivor benefit program right now covers firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and volunteer personnel.
Okay, when you say firefighters,
right?
Volunteer or professional or both?
It covers firefighters, emergency medical personnel, and volunteer personnel. It has the definition in there for volunteer personnel. Hold on one second. And that definition hasn't changed, but yeah, I believe it would certainly cover volunteer firefighters.
No, but does it cover professional as well?
It does. It doesn't limit it at this point. So the firefighters are defined, and then it cites to a different statute. And I can double check that for you if you want, but that's my understanding is this the original purpose of the law was to fill in a gap for individuals that died in the line of duty but didn't otherwise have access to a benefit like this.
Okay, when you say otherwise had access to a benefit, if you're a professional firefighter and you die, have a tragic accident in the line of duty, would you then get workers' compensation, your family get workers' compensation?
My understanding is that you would, yes. But obviously that would be different for volunteer personnel.
Volunteers wouldn't, I assume, wouldn't have that. So we set up a state fund to do this, and that benefit level is how much?
Right now, the benefit level is $80,000. It went up from $50,000
And
last
we
year.
increased that last year. I
Right.
believe. Yeah.
From 50 to 80,000 last year.
Okay, but we didn't change the definition of who it covered.
Right, right. So what this bill would do would be adding law enforcement officers to it and also corrections officers.
Okay, Wayne?
So there are a lot of different kinds of law enforcement officers. You have state police, you have sheriffs, you have various ones. And they have different kinds of packages or benefits that they might accrue. Do you have any, advice on the differences there and which ones don't have anything and which ones have something?
All I can tell you is that the definition is that it's, I believe this would now cover all sworn law enforcement officers. So to qualify for this, you would need to be meet the standards under the Criminal Justice Council. And I believe that would cover, the full swath of law enforcement officers in the state.
I understand that. My question was more towards, state police, obviously, they have insurance packages or different kinds of things like that probably would not be available to some of the small police organizations. Any perspective there in terms of?
I honestly don't know the difference that, the availability. All I know is that this would sweep pretty broadly and it would cover, anyone that is certified by the Vermont Criminal Justice Council. And my understanding is there is also a federal benefit that's available to police officers that die in the line of duty that's significant as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm good. I guess I had one question today. If you were a volunteer first responder or some small communities still have constables that might be quasi-volunteer positions, would they be covered today under this benefit?
I will say they didn't receive testimony on that. And I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I'm happy to take a look and I can certainly follow up with you on the definitions on that and who's covered. But I don't know that off the top of my head.
My guess is in most cases, the constable might not be a sworn police officer, but I may be wrong.
So,
So
sorry.
Sophie gave us kind of a quick
Right.
overview of the bill. She was getting into the details and
Right, well, I wanted to follow up on
which is
Wayne's
great,
question.
but yeah, go ahead.
Because more specifically, I was thinking the same thing. So if you are a Vermont State Police officer and you have, and I don't know if this is true or not, but you're somebody in the state who would otherwise qualify for this, but you have a survivor insurance policy already for $1 million or $500,000, would you still get the $80,000?
So right now,
still get on top of that?
yeah, the way this is structured, that is the way it would work. So right now, if you're killed in the line of duty, your survivors can file a request for the monetary benefit, and then there's a board that's set up called the Emergency Personnel Survivors Benefit Review Board, and they would then look at the claim and determine whether or not to award the benefit. So, I mean, I don't think
But do we
there's
know
any.
if part of what their determination is whether they've already got something else, some other form of insurance that would cover this?
I'm not aware of that. I mean, I know the treasurer's office kind of oversees the program, my understanding is, the benefit has been awarded relatively infrequently. Right now, recently there have been a number of claims for this benefit. So I don't know. My understanding is historically it's been a question of, did the person die in the line of duty? Do they fall within the provisions and then they're awarded it? I'm not aware of any
Yeah.
additional
Okay.
research into what other benefits they may be eligible for. I don't know if that's something the board would ask about.
But there haven't been a lot.
But she said they would also probably.
There would be co-workers comp probably also.
Plus life
Right.
insurance.
But we're expanding the definition from where, I guess there hasn't really been a definition, is what you're saying, but we have a more expansive, there has been, but this is a much
Basically,
more.
here.
And now we're
Right,
expanding.
now, we're expanding it to, hey.
Right.
Expanding the categories of individuals who could receive it.
Yeah.
To include corrections officers and law enforcement officers.
And I'm just, speaking for myself, I'm interested in the concept because, these people put their neck on the line.
Yeah.
Each and every day.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, if you have a life insurance policy, the family's gonna get some help. As opposed to, we had a volunteer firefighter, last year who ended up having a heart attack, at a call and died. He's a volunteer, there's no benefit other than this, state program and funds. But there hasn't been many, requests or funds, but even with a few, we've had to put money in as part of the BAA, I believe.
Yes, we do.
So,
Yeah, the BAA, I believe, $220,000 to cover pending claims that are out there, and I think then to leave a cushion of additional 2 possible claims if there were 2 more claims.
So do we know, and I'm looking at Chris as much as I'm looking at you, Sophie, do we know if the committee took testimony on what other benefits the paid law enforcement already gets? Do you have any sense of that, Chris?
Fiscal, I do not know.
They did not, as far as I'm aware.
I don't know.
So perhaps maybe that's just a question. Sophie, you made mention you may want to check back on that just to be sure and get back to us maybe.
Somebody.
In relation
Or the
to,
committee.
like
I don't know if
state
it
police
was
and
so-
stuff in place already.
Is this House General?
It was House General.
So who would have, is this yours?
It belongs to
Only
somebody.
because a law enforcement
Public
would be,
safety.
corrections would be yours.
More of it's yours.
Why? Why don't you go check in?
Figure it out.
Check in with House General. We're not voting on this today anyway. We
Yeah,
don't
no,
have everybody.
I would just suggest we just do a quick back check, Sophie, and then let us.
Yeah, but
No, and they may have looked at it, but if they haven't, it is a piece of the puzzle that needs to be considered,
right,
so.
because even though there's no appropriations now,
Oh, there will be, and would like to say there never will be, but. there will.
right, there will be, and we're expanding the universe of who there will be
Yeah.
a need for. And I totally agree with you that these are people who put their lives on the line and we need to do what we can. Do we already do that with the benefits that people get now?
Right.
With
As a
their-
paid professional.
As a paid professional?
I think that's the question.
That is the question. I think we're all struggling to.
So I'm not
understand.
gonna, that was not, there wasn't testimony on that in the House General.
Okay.
They had testimony from the Treasurer's Office, and they had testimony from Chris Hoare, who is the president of a police association. But I don't believe that any of those questions were asked, or that there was testimony on those, that particular issue.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions? So. Thank you very
I
much.
think we
for
understand.
the
Thank you, Sophie.
overview. We're gonna ask Christie and Joint Fiscal to, hear his notes on potential costs.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, Chris Root, Joint Fiscal. You all have a fiscal note for H57 posted on the committee's page. I'm not going to read this word for word. I think Sophie did an excellent job giving you the overview. If you want to flip to the very last page of the note, that's really where, the bottom line is detailed a little bit. I think you all are familiar with this fund and this benefit from the conversation you heard around the BAA, as well as last year when the benefit was increased from $50,000 to $80,000. As you know, the fund had gone many years without having a claim, fortunately. Recently, there have been several claims submitted. I believe one was recently approved. There are 2 applications pending, and the treasurer's office had requested $220,000 in the BAA to top up the fund to make sure it has sufficient money to pay out the 2 pending applications and have enough money left in the fund to pay 2 additional applications should they be submitted. The Emergency Personnel Survivor Fund does not have its own dedicated revenue source. It is funded by transfers from the General Assembly, typically from the general fund, accrued interest in the fund, and any contributions that are made to the fund. We don't know specifically what this bill would cost because it's impossible for us to predict the frequency of these line of duty deaths and the survivor applications. But I can tell you that by expanding the pool of eligibility to cover more people, that does have the potential to lead to more claims being submitted in the future. And any additional demands on that survivor fund would in turn fall to the general fund to pay for by default, since the fund doesn't have its own funding source. Yes.
If we look at, let's just say you went back the last 5 years, and how many unfortunate deaths have we had in these new categories that were?
There were no awards paid out between May 2016 and November 2020.
These wouldn't have been eligible for reward.
So at
If we looked at, law enforcement, if we looked at professional firefighters, whatever new corrections, how many?
Professional firefighters are not new to this bill. The only new things in this bill are law enforcement and corrections. There have been in all of state history that I could find 29 line of duty deaths, including 3 from DOC. And I'm aware of 1 that has occurred in the last 24 months. And that is an important provision of this bill to be mindful of, is that there's that 24-hour limit or 24-month limit in order to claim a benefit. So that wouldn't create a situation where you might have a survivor claiming a benefit for something that might have occurred many decades in the past. So fortunately, this is a relatively rare occurrence in Vermont. And the other thing I just want to point out, and
29 total, like.
that was the statistic I could find online.
Yeah, no.
From deaths, yeah.
Yeah, and that goes back forever.
The last thing I just wanted to point out, and this is like a really small thing, and this is one reason why you all got the bill, is the change to the benefit review board removes a public member and the per diem compensation.
The bill?
Yeah, the really exciting part, but this is really not going to result in any sort of material savings from, not having to pay somebody a per diem, because the board meets really infrequently. And really,
It's another bill we already passed.
yeah, this is not your typical legislative committee authorized for, up to 6 meetings. This is one of those deals where, the board is convened as it's needed, and they can go years without being convened. So that's one reason why you all got the bill referred to you. And as you all know, and I think Sophie mentioned, but I'll just reiterate in case anyone missed it, the bill does not contain any appropriations. It doesn't adjust the benefit amount, other than, some changes to the definitions of survivor to sort of update the terminology. The primary crux of it is adding those 2 additional classes of employees and putting that 24-month requirement.
Do we know how many bodies that is when we add those classes of employees?
It will be thousands, but I do not know for sure because they're not all state employees.
But the 80,000 is per family, right? It's
Correct.
not per
Member of the family.
It's not per member of the family. My understanding is it's per death or per victim.
No,
You're good?
they're just saying one time.
Oh, okay.
Good.
All right. Anybody have any other questions? Okay, I think we have a little more work we want to do. We weren't going to vote on it
Yeah,
anyway.
I
And
will
we'll see what we
check
can
it.
find.
I'll check.
And then we'll see if this is something we need, how quickly. I don't think there was a rush, but probably this week to vote on it. So we'll take it from there. And thank you, Sophie. Did you have anything else or are you all set?
I just wanted to add, I did look at the definitions, and certainly for firefighter, it would cover professional firefighters. They're broad definitions, the statutory references that are in there.
It
And the
covers
other
them
thing-
now. It
I'm sorry,
covers
what was
them
that?
now. It
It
covers them
does.
now? Okay,
Yes, yes,
thank you.
it does. The other piece was the e-board piece, which it adds language that if the General Assembly isn't in session and money is needed to pay out an award, that the emergency board can transfer funds to do that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really happy Sophie mentioned that because there's also a provision, she's triggered my memory that there's a provision that gives the state treasurer up to 12 months to pay out a claim. So that provides some additional, financial flexibility should the fund exhaust its resources, that those resources can be topped up in order to pay out a benefit claim.
Okay, that's good. Okay, well, thank you both very much. We appreciate it.
You.
Getting back in the swing here. Bills, we'll have a few more bills committee. Keep looking at the calendar, particularly the notice calendar. And you'll see some things maybe coming to us. I don't see a lot. We will have the opioid settlement one come to us. But that's a place to find out what is happening. So I had hoped to have a spreadsheet of all the requests and all of that to give to you. I mentioned that in the email I sent. It's going to be tomorrow at this point. My day got derailed. I apologize, but we'll have something for you on that. In the meantime, tomorrow, I will not tell you Teresa's committee. At 9 o'clock, we'll have Rep. Mahali from House General talk about their committee bill. And then at 10 o'clock, Rep. Black is going to come in with healthcare. So those are the other two major complicated ones. I didn't think that we actually needed to have House Commerce in. Their stuff is generally pretty straightforward. And so I'm not having every committee present their bill. We don't need to do that. But if there are complicated ones like these that we're talking about now, then it makes sense to have them come in. But the others you should be reading. If Teresa's in tomorrow from 1 to 2, let's see. And then Rep. Conlon's going to come in for House Ed at the end of the day tomorrow. So I think tomorrow we should wrap up committee letter presentations. And we will continue in times in between to go through the budget and see what else we can close out. So keep reading those committee letters, and then we'll also talk about the spreadsheet of asks and try to get our arms around $328 million.
All be well.
It's all going to work out, but getting from here to there is, yeah. I actually said to somebody earlier today, picking what we're going to do is going to be like getting into Harvard. Getting into Harvard, $328 million. I think this is a new